Massimo Rivola went on live television in Hungary and did something Aprilia bosses almost never do with a camera in their face. He buried his own rider. Jorge Martin had just locked the front at turn 1, taken down 4 other bikes, including the championship leader, and Rivola looked straight down the lens and called it a mistake no world champion is allowed to make. Clean, brutal, case closed. Except it was not closed at all, because a few hours later, sitting with the written press, the same boss was telling a noticeably different story. So what did Rivola see between those 2 interviews that the rest of us missed? And why did the man who lit the fire spend the next day quietly trying to put it out? Here is what makes this bigger than a boss losing his temper. The rider he torched on television sits second in the championship. The rider Martin wiped out at turn 1 sits first. Both of them ride the same factory Aprilia. So in the space of 1 corner, Aprilia did not just lose a podium. It threw its own title lead into the gravel and handed Marc Marquez a clean run at the win he needed. Rivola was not reacting to a crash. He was reacting to the day his team beat itself. And that is exactly why his words carried weight, and exactly why changing them inside a day became a problem of its own. Start with what actually happened, because the footage is not kind to anyone. Martin launched off the 3rd row and did the thing Martin always does. He went hunting at turn 1, diving for the inside, trusting a front end that had saved him 100 times. This time, it folded. The Aprilia washed out under braking and speared into the pack, collecting his own teammate Marco Bezzecchi, then Fabio Di Gianantonio, Raul Fernandez, and Fermin Aldeguer. 5 riders on the floor before the opening lap was even finished. The championship leader was one of them, taken down by the exact man chasing him in the standings. The stewards moved fast. Martin was handed a double long lap penalty to serve at the next round in the Czech Republic, a punishment that will cost him real time at Brno. On the surface, the story looked finished. Reckless rider, big crash, clear penalty, furious boss. But the moment you ask why that front folded in the first place, the tidy version starts to fall apart. Because Martin was not the only rider frightened of that corner. Balaton Park had been resurfaced at turn 1 between the World Superbike round and the MotoGP weekend, and the new asphalt never bedded in. Brad Binder said it looked like it was made of oil and was still seeping through. Pecco Bagnaia called the new surface a disaster. He said the asphalt was breaking up so badly that running behind another bike was like having a minigun in front of you, from the stones flying off the track. One rider admitted he was praying before turn 1. This was not a hidden hazard that ambushed Martin. It was the loudest complaint of the weekend. And here is the part that should sit heaviest with Rivola. The trap that caught his rider was not a surprise to anybody in that paddock. Bagnaia had warned openly during practice that turn 1 offered almost 0 grip and would bite somebody at the start. The danger was flagged, on the record, 2 days before it happened. Martin did not invent the risk at that corner. He rode into a hazard his entire grid had already named out loud. Then add the machinery. Jack Miller explained that the ride height devices were dragging riders into turn 1 15 to 20 kilometers an hour faster than they wanted, forcing an unnatural lunge at the brakes. On that oily new surface, he said, you could not shed the device without locking the front. Sit with that for a second. The bikes were arriving too fast, into a corner with no grip, running a system that punished anyone who tried to slow down properly. Turn 1 was not a test of judgment. It was a machine built to lock front wheels, and Martin's number simply came up first. So the paddock did something Rivola did not expect. It turned on him, not on Martin. Bagnaia said flatly that he did not think Martin did anything wrong, that he braked on time and just got swallowed by the surface. Then Ricard Jove, a former team boss with no reason to flatter Aprilia, went further. He accepted Martin was at fault for the lockup, but branded Rivola's public takedown a vendetta rather than criticism, and accused the boss of airing a personal grudge on camera. Suddenly, the villain of the story was not the rider lying in the gravel. It was the man in the suit who put him there in public. And by Rivola's own account, the first thing Martin did was telling. Before the stewards had even ruled, he went to Bezzecchi and the crews he had collected, and apologise to their faces. That is not the posture of a man who thinks he did something reckless. It is the posture of a rider who knows how a dead corner can swallow you whole. The boss had that detail in his pocket while he buried his own rider on television, and reached for the harsh version anyway. But this is where it would be easy to oversell Martin's innocence, and the truth will not allow it. One of his own victims refused to let him off. Di Gianantonio, climbing out of the same gravel trap, said the riders gamble too much at every start, that they are no longer risking a crash, they are risking lives. He pointed straight at Martin's habit of stealing ground at turn 1 and said, "It finally did not pay." So this was never a clean case of an innocent man framed by his boss. It was something messier and far more revealing about why Rivola changed his mind. Because now, go back to those 2 interviews. On camera, in the heat of it, Rivola said a world champion simply cannot make that mistake, that it looked stupid with 2 Aprilias buried in the pile, and hinted the penalty should have been even heavier. Hours later, with the written press, the same man would not even call it a small mistake out loud. He compared it favourably to Martin's crash with Bezzecchi in Japan last year, and framed it as a front brake error in a low grip patch, the kind of thing that happens. Same crash, same boss, same day, 2 completely different verdicts. People assumed the angry television version was what Rivola truly believed, and the softer one was damage control. It was the other way around. The burial was the reflex, the retraction was the judgment. So let us be honest about what really happened here. Rivola did not soften because he went weak. He softened because he watched the replays, heard his own grid describe a corner nobody could trust, and realised he had branded an honest racing mistake as a disgrace on live television about a rider he still badly needs. The facts caught up with the verdict, and the verdict lost. And the only piece of this story that survived contact with the evidence is the one Rivola never controlled. The double long lap penalty still stands. Martin will serve it at Brno in full view, while the man who was supposed to protect him spends the next round explaining why he said the quiet part out loud. The crash did not cost Aprilia the title lead. Bezzecchi still tops the standings. It cost them the chance to put the championship out of reach and handed Marquez the opening he had been waiting all season for. The reaction cost Rivola something a lot harder to win back. So the real question was never whether Martin made a mistake. It was whether his own boss had the nerve to stand behind the version he shouted first. What would you have done in Rivola's seat? Let us know in the comments below. And once you do that, make sure to click on the video appearing on your screen right now.